welcome to the Norwood Conservation Commission meeting on Wednesday, December 4th, 2019. If anyone has a recording device present, please let us know now. We'll have open roll call.
Peter Bamber.
Joe DiMaria.
Stephen Washburn.
Cheryl Doyle.
Chris Cpc.
John Gear.
Al Getz.
I have the meeting called to order. We have 7:30 discussion with Chris Hirsch on behalf of the Neponset River Watershed Association and the Massachusetts Division of Ecological Restoration to discuss proposed removal of the Mill Pond Dam to restore Trap Hole Brook.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Evening. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
It's warm and dry in here. Can't complain.
Definitely warm.
Do you want me to help you set up anybody?
Sure.
So we figured you'd get a couple of nice pictures of what we're talking about to look at.
Great.
There on the bottom. One here and let's do this for a second.
We can flip them out if you
Yeah.
see those better.
For sure. Do you want me to hand out some of these first? Or you
Sure. Yeah.
keep it on?
So, hello. Good to see you all again.
Good evening.
Evening.
Chris Hirsch from the Neponset River Watershed Association. This is Joe Gould and Gerard Martin from Mass DEP. And Joe is with Division of Ecological Restoration with the state. So tonight we wanted to update you on progress made so far on the project. If you remember, what we're proposing to do is remove the Mill Pond Dam and restore Trap Hole Brook through the former impoundment. So up to this point, we've hired a consulting engineer to do some preliminary investigations of the site, do some wetland delineation, some sediment investigation work, and then draft preliminary 40% designs for what the project will entail. So what we're presenting tonight are the results of the work that were done by Interfluve. Did you have anything to add?
Yeah, just I guess the only thing I'll say is these are the renderings that depict what's in the design with a little bit of artistic freedom. We actually have the designs right here if you want to look at those too, but you see up here.
Yeah, so what we're proposing for this project essentially is to remove the dam, to partially dredge the impoundment to re-establish the stream channel through the impoundment. There were some concerns about the infrastructure, particularly the Sumner Street culvert, and the elevation that would need to be made up between the stream bed down here and the bottom of the Sumner Street culvert. And so the solution we're proposing for that issue is to create a series of pools and riffles that will make up that elevation change, so that this Sumner Street culvert does not become perched or a barrier for the fish passage, because ultimately the goal of the project is to reestablish fish passage and habitat through the area. So what we're planning to do is have kind of a natural meander with some natural wood, root wads, kind of armoring the bends to kind of try to keep it within the bounds of what we're anticipating for the stream. Obviously, streams are going to go where they want to go, and it may shift left or right a bit, but this is generally kind of the layout that we are proposing.
Yeah, and I will say that there was quite a bit of hydraulic H&H work done to really model the stream corridor, and what Chris was talking about with making up the elevations. we also wanted to make sure that that wasn't going to cause, there wasn't going to be any long-term scour. There wasn't also going to be sediment kind of pushed downstream that would fill in or anything like that. So we're actually proposing to remove a lot of that sediment. And not because it's not clean, it is actually from the sediment analysis we've done. Everything looks like it's way below human health as well as ecological standards. So we actually have the raw data and some summary reports on that. But the other thing too is, as Chris was mentioning, I want to make sure that Summer Street culvert didn't have to go anywhere because it would be a very expensive culvert to move or change anything.
Well, it's a new culvert.
It's a new culvert as well. All that together, we really wanted to make sure we could make those up, make up that grade. Also, just so you know, the consultant did depth refusals and kind of looked at where the stream bed was historically, and that's kind of where we are trying to propose to do it. It's also pretty typical of what the stream corridor reaches look like upstream, so the widths and everything like that are typical of what you'd find in the stream corridor if it was not a dam.
Right.
So.
And part of the decision to dredge also had to do with the Norwood Gardens downstream, because as you guys are probably aware, there's already flooding issues during heavy rainstorms in that parking lot, and we felt that that would be an area where the sediment that would have been released would ultimately settle, and we felt like raising the elevation of that stream bed at all would just make the flooding much worse. So we've basically taken that into account, and with the H&H modeling have assured that this project would not affect flooding downstream or upstream of the site. If anything, it would reduce flood risk upstream.
I think another important thing too is that we just held a meeting with some of the neighbors just recently. Actually on Monday during the snowstorm. Chris helped set that up, and we showed them these preliminary, these renderings and the preliminary designs and stuff like that. And it seems like they're all pretty receptive to the project. They were happy that we're kind of keeping it closer to the property lines and stuff. We actually plan on adding the property lines to these renderings to kind of show you, but right now it's basically bordering all of these properties right along here, and then this is the town-owned property on this side. So,
Yep.
kind of split the difference. Right down the
And
middle.
there was a change of ownership at the house that actually owns part of the spillway of the former dam. But the new owner was there at the meeting, and she seemed very excited about the project and on board. So we'll plan to get a letter of support from her at some point soon. Just kind of make sure everybody's on board with the project.
Do you guys want us to get into the design at all and kind of just talk about like some of the general things that are going to happen with the design?
Well, I'm the conservation agent,
Sure.
and I've been involved with this area for quite some time now. And I'm a little puzzled. You're coming up with it's clean, and when we wanted to dredge and we took samples, it was terribly dirty, and that killed the project because we couldn't afford the millions of dollars to dispose of the dredge materials. So now, how all of a sudden is it clean when less than 20 years ago it was terribly dirty? Okay, so I don't understand that, and I have no problem against with the removal of the dam and that, but I just am very confused over how all of a sudden it can be clean when before, when we wanted to do a project, it came to a halt because we couldn't afford the disposal cost of contaminated material.
So, first question I have is, do you guys have that data you can share with us?
We sure have, and I offered it, and nobody was interested in it.
I would love to see it, and we would love to see it. And so I should be clear, we did, I think, 4 sediment composite samples, 4 or 5.
You did 3 in the pond area.
Yeah.
And 1 upstream and
One downstream.
some downstream.
Yep.
But that's bothering me about this project.
I will tell you that's pretty, actually, DP has recommendations on this stuff about how many sediment samples you should be taking, per 1,000 cubic yards of sediment, all that stuff like that. I think we are definitely close to or within those guidelines. We're happy to do more sediment sampling if needed. So I don't, Gerard, I don't know if you want to chime in there, but we have about 5,000 cubic yards of sediment in the impoundment.
Yeah.
And 3 in, and then 1 upstream, 1 downstream. So to really see what those other. So, do you want to chime in there a
Well,
little
yeah,
bit?
I mean, that's probably sufficient, but any, more data obviously is better.
Sure.
If the town has data, we can look at that, we can make sure that if, the soil that is dredged, and we were just talking about it a little bit in the hallway, does go to the appropriate place for the, for the compounds that are in it. And I know you've had some discussions with
Yeah.
some various, the town and what about the
Yes.
possibilities.
And I actually, I did share the report with you
Oh, yeah, that's
and,
right. Along
and
with
the
it,
rest of
right?
DR, yeah, but
Yeah.
it was in a huge
Okay.
package of information.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, it had some exceedances.
Lead
It
and
was lead,
zinc.
yeah, lead and
Yeah.
zinc. That's right. Sorry, a lot of projects. I will tell you that there wasn't anything that was over the thresholds, but overall, like in its total, if you really look at the sediment, I wouldn't say it's like super clean, but it's pretty clean. It's definitely what we consider, well within the bounds of either letting it downstream or, really kind of permitted use on something like we were talking about with the town is possibly using it on top of the landfill or something like that. So we obviously have to go through all the different sediment characterization analysis, really get that all permitted. There's a lot of steps between now and then, but,
Yeah, I mean, we'll make sure that it ends up at the right place.
Sure.
And lead's tricky because natural occurring concentrations of lead can be higher than our health-based standards. So you can be a little trickier, so.
That's a pickle.
Huh?
That sounds like a pickle.
Yeah.
So, but we will take that into effect, if, we'll take that, definitely take into account. I'll take another look at that report, and if we need to do more sediment analysis, we're happy to do it. So.
Okay, the next question is that recently we've had a proposal to deal with invasive vegetation, and I haven't heard back where that stands. And we also have an Eagle Scout project for dealing with some of the areas, so I need to know more about where this new brook is going to be in relation to where it is now. So like the Eagle project is proposing, and we have already procured a bench to put in there. And I want to know a little more detail rather than a rendering. I want an engineering drawing that shows the business. So that's where I'm at. And as I say, I'm not against the project in any form, but I want to make sure that we're doing the right thing. Now, the area we chose to put the bench has a couple of huge boulders in the woods right near the brook, and it would be a rather scenic spot to have a bench, okay? And since that's a prominent part of the area, I don't see it on the plan, so things like that have to be part of the plan, just like if somebody was filing a notice of intent with us, we would expect to see that kind of information. And of course, when you file a notice of intent to do this, it'll have to have it, but I don't think we should skip over those kind of things at this point.
Sure, so I left a voicemail, and I'm sorry if you didn't get it, but with regards to the invasive species grant, they didn't fund us for that project, so we'll have to seek another source of funding to do invasive species work. To the area that you're talking about for the bench, the 2 large stones, so that's beyond the scope of where we're going to be doing any work. It's a little bit further downstream. But I was actually just out there, we were doing the cultural assessment with the PAL archaeologists, and they believe that area, those 2 stones were actually an area where there was a temporary mill set up. They have an old map that shows a mill in that location. So we went down and looked at it. We're not doing any work, and nothing that we're doing is going to directly affect that area. But it would be, I agree, a really nice place, and if we could incorporate some of that history into maybe a sign or something, that would be a really, a benefit to the whole park.
Yeah, one other thing I'll say is that I think this project, we were at that meeting, was it 6 months ago, 5 months ago, where the Eagle Scout was there, the Trails Committee, representatives of the Trails Committee were there. And I think we heard them loud and clear, and I think this project actually can do a really nice job of complementing some of the work that they were talking about,
Yeah, they were looking to,
Do a
on the
trail.
town side, to do a trail.
Yep, which I think is wonderful. I mean, we're certainly, I think the project team is certainly happy to see that and have that incorporated as kind of a project that's really working well with this project. I mean, as far as our current, obviously, project area, I think the only thing that would be really within that is this trail itself. And as that kind of develops along with this project, we can definitely try and, make sure that we incorporate and, draw in that stuff. As those kind of things progress together, we're at the draft 40% design
Right.
phase. So if you really want to get into some timelines, just so you guys, have this kind of, as all these other things develop, we're probably finishing up this end of December, early January, with these 40% draft designs. So that's a conceptual level. We wanted the renderings and this stuff kind of drawn. It's kind of a little early, I guess, but we wanted it drawn for some of the community meetings to really kind of start to show people what it's going to look like. If you then kind of fast forward a little bit, we'll be working on MIPA, Chris and myself, through early next year, and really kind of filing the MIPA filing, which is really the coming out to all the different permitting agencies, all the different people, all the different state agencies weigh in, and then really start to try and advance some of the designs a little bit more through the next year, 2020. So by the time we really are going to submit an NOI, it's probably either end of next year or early the following year. We're just kind of wanting to come and talk to folks now. So I just want to make sure you understand that from a timeline standpoint, because as those other things progress, we can kind of continue to incorporate those things. So, yeah, this is more.
What I've noticed over the last 10 years is there's significantly more silt in the pond than there was 10 or 15 years ago. Did you dig deep enough to sample what may have been the brook bottom 10 or 15 years ago? And I noticed that your sample points were all, I think, at the exit end, or close together at the exit end, and very little, there were only, the three were clustered in an area downstream as opposed to any of the area upstream. And I think that they probably should have been more evenly spread.
So I think you might have, if that was the case, it might have been just where we did the composite down there. Those three were pretty close together. But we actually did, this is a terribly small map, so I'm going to put it on the other map. But we actually did, so a composite down here, and then we did one here, and then another one kind of roughly here in the impoundment. And when they do that, they do try and get down pretty deep. They're using the augers and really trying to get a deep core, and then the composite. If we hit, I don't know if we got all the way down to, native till, as we call our stream bed, but they definitely do try and get in there and get pretty deep. They did do also probing throughout the whole area and stuff like that. So if sediment's a concern, and it sounds like it is, we're definitely willing to do additional sampling if it's needed. This is really what we consider, what we do for first flush, especially to get through MIPA filing and stuff like that, and really kind of meet what the DEP's standards are. So, but we're happy to, we've done them twice before if it's, it's a concern.
I would assume our concerns are the same as yours, is that we're concerned about kicking it up and sending it downstream.
Yeah, and that's definitely something we don't want to do, especially with the flooding concerns downstream and stuff like that. I can show you this map. I can show you this stuff. This is preliminary. You guys can actually just have this copy if you want it. But this is the preliminary design memo, and it has actually the sediment table. This is a summary table You guys have it already?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you must have sent it out?
Yeah, I sent them the design plans
Okay.
and the memo.
But this is that, and then it has the same thing, then, but, yeah. Okay.
I think he's following up.
The other question that I have is that since a significant portion, almost half, is privately owned, does that affect your funding?
I don't think it will, but it is something to consider. Most of the work that we'll actually be doing will be on the town side of the property. One of the funding sources we're looking at is MVP's funding, and that obviously is for work done on town-owned properties. So that is something to consider for sure. But I don't see that as being a major barrier.
Yeah, and currently the way the designs are laid out is we plan on access to the property, and all the staging is all on the town-owned side. If you see on the maps here, this is where the staging and access are along this side. So we're going to try and stay off the privately owned side as much as possible, for sure. I think as well, just on top of that MVP funding, the NRD funds, which is actually, so that's one of the trustees from that, which is DEP and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. That funding is actually already provided a little bit of money for this preliminary work, and it's definitely, there's more money there that can be spent, kind of match some of the MVP funds too, assuming the trustees are continuing to support the project in that way. But
And we've used NRD money on private properties for projects on private properties, so that's not an issue.
so, and those are the natural resource damage assessment funds that are set up for, and you're gonna have to help me out, the Blackbird
Blackburn and Union
Yes.
in Walpole.
Okay, now I have another question here. I don't know this gentleman from DEP, I know many people at DEP, but...
I'm not in the wetlands program, so that's
okay.
probably why.
So now
I work in the wayside cleanup program.
Now the question comes, last time we did a big project, the Bureau of Dam Safety was ordering us to do one thing, and the wetlands part of DEP was on another page, okay? And they were fighting amongst themselves, okay? Now, what I want to make sure is that not only are we dealing with the sediments and that business, but we don't want to be partway into the project and another branch of DEP is telling us to stop because their nose is out of joint, okay?
I have been keeping our wetland folks.
So I want to make sure that
Yep.
all departments of DEP are on the same page with this project, and we don't end up with a problem later on, okay? So that's something that's been a
Appreciate that.
concern.
I think it's great that we already have somebody from DEP is so involved on the project. The second thing is I think the MIPA hopefully will really
Yes.
help tee that up and really air this to all the different departments within the state and all the different folks. So I totally understand what you're saying. As a person who works for the state and works with them, but I think we're really going to try and make sure we do that, and we're
Okay.
clear.
Yeah.
So.
Cheryl has a question.
I have a couple of questions. I know you guys want to take the dam out for the fish.
Mhm.
How are you keeping the fish in that area?
Meaning like when we take the dam out, or?
Yeah, because everything's going to keep going downstream, so I'm wondering about the fish because I don't like to see fish flopping around in a dry bed
Right.
in the dead of summer because I think it's cruel. And then my other question is we already know there's flooding up behind the gardens, which means it's also water that comes when the river overcrests its banks, because the Neponset River flows in that back area, which means it floods a good portion of the industrial park back there. So if you have a good water flow coming from there and you take the dam out and then you have the river cresting and it's filling up and there are three other ponds out there, how are you going to control the flooding then?
So I will take a shot at your questions. First one, as far as the fish go, couple things. If there's a time of year restriction or anything like that, a toy, we say we wouldn't be doing any work in the stream. We'd be doing it outside of that time of year restrictions where there's any spawning or anything like that happening. Second thing is that we are making sure both, well, that's why we're doing all the H&H stuff, to make sure that we have ample flow to maintain a good stream, fish habitat in both those as well. That's something we're definitely going to make sure we design for. I hope that starts to explain answer your question for that. And there's, I think actually the fish that are here right now are mostly warm water fish. And the fish downstream actually that we want back are the cold water fish species, and we want the stream to kind of start to revert back to a cold water fishery. So what we're actually hoping to see is fish start to come up from the Neponset and from the trips upstream and really kind of recolonize this area, if you will. So that's what we're hoping to see, especially as you kind of create these, more typical stream conditions. So that's really what we're designing for, we're hoping for. I will tell you that, once again, DER has been involved with a ton of dam removals, and we've been pretty successful at doing that. I was actually just out with DMF doing sampling on a bunch of streams that we've restored. Tack Factory being one of them that steps out, and Red Brook and stuff like that. And they really do start to come back, and it's actually amazing to see after 5 years. So hopefully that reassures you there. The second part of your question about the flooding, one of the things I'll say is that this dam is pretty much filled up. It's what we consider pretty much a run river dam at this point in time. It's not actually holding back any floodwaters. It has very little, as you would think about the whole dam, a lot less storage capacity than what it basically.
It's already been breached. This water's not going through the spillway. It's going through the breach.
On top of that, it's breached too, yes.
Right.
But also, even if it wasn't breached, it's not really creating a lot of flood storage capacity.
Right.
Then it's also breached. So those two things together, we're pretty confident with all the modeling, and we're happy to give you all the raw data and modeling and stuff like that, that this is not going to cause any additional flooding. As far as the Neponset, river coming up and causing any backwater, or whether we did this project or not, I don't really think that this is going to have an impact on that. There's nothing really we could do here to hold flood storage capacity or increase flood storage capacity that I could think of for the Neponset River in that way. It's just not really something that can be designed into this. I do understand what the concerns are, and I do know that this is a kind of a low gradient area in that lower section where the deposit is. But unfortunately, I guess the best way I can say is that kind of is what it is right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I also know that when water flows, any barriers in its way will slow the flow of the water. So now you're taking a barrier out, which is giving it free flow. And have you guys thought about the free flow of that on the impact of, one, the apartments, and then, it's going to go out into the meadow, but that is my biggest concern. Because you never want to leave something in a worse condition than the condition it's already in, even though it's not the grandest of condition. You don't want to make it worse. You want to always make it better.
Absolutely. And the existing conditions as well as the projected conditions are in the model.
Okay.
So we'll have modeling results for both of those.
Yeah, and we're happy to share. We already have this preliminary one, but we're happy to share all those results with you guys, and make sure you can go through them as much as you would like. And we can actually also, in future meetings, especially when we get to the NOI stage, so there is sometimes we'll have the consultant here to answer any of those technical questions for you guys as well. So, yeah.
It's correct me if I'm wrong, but whether it's done, you do this now or in 30 years, but with the sedimentation that's filled up that pond, it's going to revert back to a stream. But you won't have dredged anything. It won't be done in a good manner, and it won't. It's just going to do it no matter what. Here's an opportunity to do it right.
Well, no, I'm just, my biggest concern always in this town is the flooding because it's always an issue.
Right, but
So
I
I
mean, this
just
isn't
wanna
gonna
make
change it.
sure.
I'm just saying, as long as it's
Yeah.
done right, it should be a
That's what I
benefit.
just wanna,
Yeah.
I understand. Yeah, I respect that. Yeah, we will definitely answer those questions and provide all that information to you. And I totally understand you don't not wanting to have something, you don't want to do something and then just come back and be like kick yourself 5 years down the road. And you don't want that either. So I totally understand.
or people complaining, there's a bunch of dead fish and they stink.
Oh.
Sorry about that.
One of the nice things about Trap Hole Brook is, and probably the reason it's still an intact fishery, is there's no municipal water withdrawals within its aquifer. And so while a lot of other areas in the watershed dry up, like if you remember that drought we had in 2016, Trap Hole was one of the only brooks that were still flowing during that. So I don't think drying that up will be a concern for this.
Okay.
And then one of the nice things is when we do
That's
create these
interesting.
deeper pools and some of this stuff, I mean, these are great refuge. I mean, this is what trout go to look for. So, we're hoping to create as much of that, refuge habitat for the summer months as well. And that's also why there's a planting plan, which is sheet 6 in that, to try and increase the tree cover as well, to help keep it shaded and all those things. So, trying to do as much as we can there.
Do we have any more
Does anybody,
questions?
yeah, do you guys have any other questions? Does anybody want to have any questions about the designs? I know we just kind of handed them out, but like what we're doing with FES lifts and like some of the fabric and plantings, if any of that stuff comes up, I'm happy to ask or answer it.
So one thing I would think the board might be interested in, not to speak for the board, but eventually we're gonna come before the board for notice of intent.
Mhm.
Do you have a ballpark of when that might be?
So I think that'd probably be end of next year, if I had to ballpark it out. We're gonna be getting through all those permits next year, hopefully, and really it's probably gonna be towards the end of the year, by the time we're ready for that. Chris, do you agree?
Yeah, I think so. That seems realistic.
Yeah, so, if there's anything between now and then too, I guess that's why it's so good we're talking now.
Yep.
And make sure, we're happy to come back, talk again, send anything. Chris, I mean, you talk to.
Okay, I only have one remaining thing. Initially, DEP was always against messing with brooks and ponds, and they wouldn't even hear about dredging projects and things like that. Okay, and now we're discussing dam removals and things like that. And I don't have a feel for what regulations DEP has changed in their realm to allow this to go forward. So I would appreciate from your part sending me copies of the new regulations that allow this to go forward, so that we are prepared with the right kind of answers and the right kind of questions ahead of time. My goal always, when somebody wants to do a project, is I want to talk to them and get them to solve the problems that I know that the members of the board would come up with before it comes here, so that we don't spend weeks and weeks discussing things that should have been discussed before the plan was in its final stages.
Well, to your point, is there a percentage when there's other, you do 40% you're doing an informational meeting? What's the next percentage where you do informational meetings so that?
So there'll probably be a 75% and then a final.
Yeah, there'll be a final. We try and feel it out. I mean, as far as so DER is done. I haven't been with DER that long, but I know they've done about 40 dam removals in the state, and out of the 62 that have been done. So definitely a fair share of them, right? And each one's a little different. It depends on the town. It depends on how involved you want to be and stuff like that. So we're kind of here to ask you, when you want to come back. Some people we, send them a few things before, and then we don't really see them until we're standing in front of them with an NOI. So I guess,
Well, from our perspective, Al obviously wants to
Sure.
keep informed, but at the same time, Cheryl had legitimate concerns, and so how far along in the plans before you can ask your questions and get answers to your questions, I guess is really the way it comes down to.
sure, and I think once we, so this is all about funding, and
Mhm.
once we get the next set of funding, really to kind of bring that design to 75%, I think we can answer any single one of your
Great.
questions that you have today.
Well, see, I think that this meeting should have been held before you met with the public at somebody's house or wherever you met on Monday. I thought that we were being left out of the loop because I didn't receive any information on the sediment testing or anything. And then all of a sudden, you're having a meeting with the neighbors before you met with us. So I think we need to turn that around, and I want to know what's going on before it goes to people that are not going to be issuing the permit to do the job.
Yeah,
That's fair.
That's fair. And yeah, we're happy to meet you with you guys first next time. I think with the neighbors, it was no ill intention there. It was just simply, we're butting up against their properties, and we want to, talk to them about this stuff. And really, we had these designs and stuff like that. It wasn't anything other than that. So, but in the future, we'll definitely meet with you guys. And talk
But,
to you
I
about
got a
it.
call
Yep.
from the lady that owns the dam, and she was all upset because nobody had contacted her before it became public information, and she was really upset when she called me, and then I called Chris, and I told him he had to put out that fire before it got out of control.
Is this the new dam owner?
No,
Yeah.
the previous dam owner, when she
gotcha.
was selling her house,
Yeah,
they
she
ran,
couldn't sell
remember
it.
there was a reporter
Yep.
there? So they ran a story on this in the Reporter, and she saw it in the newspaper, obviously, and was like, whoa, what is this? And the reason that I had, left her out was basically she had contacted us saying she was leaving and she was kind of washing her hands of the whole project. So I figured she was done with it.
So we'll pull out real quick.
But yeah,
and
that was a mistake on my part for
talk
sure.
about dams statewide. And there's 3,000 dams in the state.
Yeah.
Jurisdictional dams in the state, roughly. The last 2,940 or something like that, right? One thing I can tell you is I've spent actually quite a bit of time recently looking at all the different dam lists and all the different ways in which people approach dam removal. And the reason why I bring this up is because a lot of people don't even know they own dams, or really what their responsibility is when they own a dam or a jurisdictional dam.
They're expensive.
They're expensive. They don't really know all the regulations. They don't know Office of Dam Safety, no DS's. If they're knocking on the door and sending an order, this is in I can't think of your name right now, but basically it's in poor condition. So I guess the reason why I mentioned this is because when you kind of start to remove a dam, you start to kind of rip off the Band-Aid about all the things and all the problems and everything else that comes up. And especially when you have a reporter too and stuff like that, they start to surface this stuff. And I think it's a great lesson. It's something to note in the future. A lot of people say, hey, I don't care about that dam, do whatever you have to. I want to wash my hands of it, I'm selling anyway, or something like that. That actually happens a fair amount. So I guess the thing is that it's just some of that stuff you've got to work through. That's all. It's just part of the process of working through dam removal. And, I think that's why we had the meeting, to try and talk to the folks. And we're trying to work through those kind of questions and stuff because, we don't want any disgruntled local landowners, and we don't want anybody from the ComCon to not have their answers, questions answered. So that's kind of what we're trying to work through right now.
Joe?
One thing from my point of view, would you please make sure in the future that the boundary line between the town-owned land and the privately owned land is clearly shown on each of the drawings and maps? that makes a big difference.
Absolutely.
Great suggestion. We're providing edits to these right now, so I'll make sure that, these aren't final, so I'll make sure that's included in that, for sure.
Cheryl?
Okay, 2 suggestions.
Sure,
Can we
happy
get
to
the
help.
information ahead of time and not at like 5 o'clock at night, the night before our meeting, so we could actually,
Well, I sent those to Ramonda 2
yes.
weeks ago.
But we got them delivered yesterday. She sent them electronically, but I couldn't open any of the electronic files. No matter what I did, what computer I got on, I couldn't get them open.
Okay.
And I would have preferred to read the material ahead of time. And also, I think it'd be easier that if you hit 75%, you come back to us.
Yeah.
Invite the neighbors here
Sure.
because this is the board that will vote on it, and this is the board that's gonna have to answer forever and ever to those neighbors, because you guys will do the work, you're right off in the sunset, and we're here.
I like the idea of us riding off at the sunset. But anyways, yes, we can definitely do that, and I think that's a great suggestion.
So how do you suggest I get the paperwork? Should I print,
You're
8 copies
technically-
and give them to physical
Technically, it's
copies?
supposed to be 9 copies.
9 copies,
Give them
sure.
to Ramonda, and then we get them.
I'll do that
So
from
hard
now on.
copies.
That's easy.
Hard copies, it's a lot easier. But still send her electronic one, because the electronic one will go into the file.
Okay, yep,
Yeah.
I can do that. It's no problem.
Yeah, I agree with Cheryl that I think getting back together at 75% makes a lot of sense. I think that,
I just have one comment. On the contamination, it seems like most of it is behind the impoundment, so, from the testing you've done so far.
Yep.
So I think when you're trying to nail costs down, there should be a little bit more testing back there to make sure you don't have a hot spot.
Yeah.
Because if you nail that down, you're gonna nail your costs down better, because you don't want a surprise when you start digging that out.
Sure, no, I agree. It's definitely something we're noted, that most of that sediment's probably gonna be dug up. So we're right now estimating about 2,500 cubic yards of sediment that needs to be excavated and moved. That's where it's probably a lot of it's gonna come from, so, I think the channel itself. But yeah, we're probably gonna do some more testing. We will. Good point.
any other questions? Comments, concerns? So we'll plan to hear back around the 75%
Yeah.
development phase.
We have the neighbors in with
We'll have
us.
we'll have the party
Bring the
here.
neighbors,
Yes,
yeah,
Cool.
sure,
we'll have the
absolutely.
parties here, yep.
And
Very
at
good.
75%, we've already gone through the legal process.
We have.
So we'll have all that, be able to talk to you about how that process works.
Awesome.
Yep.
Excellent.
Yeah, and by that time, we might actually already be or working on the 404 too.
Okay.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Really do.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Al.
And I still don't know your name.
Does anybody else want another copy?
Anybody else
Okay.
want to
Yeah, I'm gonna give these to Ramonda.
Okay. Yeah, if you need anything else,
Come
let
on,
us know.
fine. All right.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, appreciate it.
You too. Set this up here for you.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Bureau of Waste Site Cleanup.
Yes, so the
Okay.
Blackburn and Union
Thank you all.
Yeah, okay.
site was cleaned up
Yes,
under
yeah.
our program.
All right,
Next on the agenda,
Walpole.
7:45
Okay.
PM,
Haven't been
abbreviated
since,
notice of resource area
1964.
delineation,
Okay.
continued from November 20th, 2019. This is GLM Engineering Consultants Incorporated, representing James Kofsky, Kofsky Family Trust.
Open that door. Sorry.
DEP file number 251-0493, Norwood number N2018-04. Project location is 820 Neponset Street, Norwood, Massachusetts. Al?
Well, we have sent out to get peer review, and we haven't heard back yet, so Ramonda contacted the appropriate people, and they didn't come tonight because there was no point that's where that's at. It's out to get our quotes, and as soon as that comes in, we will deal with getting somebody on the job.
Okay, yeah, I think we do have a representative. in the
Yeah.
room from-
Oh,
I snuck in, sorry.
hi,
I'm Rob from GL
yeah,
and Rob.
okay.
Thank you, Rob.
So, we spoke with the secretary today. We would be amenable to letting the quotes come in and have Al review them and then hire whomever. He could speak with Joyce in our office, they could discuss them. But I understand you're not having a meeting for some time, is that correct?
The 18th is the next one, I believe.
Yeah, December 18th is our next
weeks.
meeting. This board, or we could make a motion and have Al pick
Yeah?
who's going to do the review out of the ones that are submitted. The applicant doesn't pick who does the review.
No, I wasn't thinking we would pick. I would just
Okay.
ask it for courtesy that he would call
Yeah.
and say, I have these 3 quotes, this is what I got, and this is who I'm gonna,
Yeah.
I'd like to go with. Just discuss it with Joyce in general.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
No, I would absolutely have Al pick. We have no issue with that. And if that would, get the process moving quicker, that would be better. And if all goes well, we might get a snow melt next week.
Yeah.
I'm sure we're all enjoying this.
We have no filings at all for the 18th of December. And it's past the date for anybody to even file anything with us right now. So we have a choice. We meet and we just deal with the quotes if they're in, or we don't meet and we make a motion and allow Al to pick the one out of the quotes that come in and keep it moving along.
I have no problem with Al picking.
Yeah,
Okay.
seems good to.
Then
I
we need-
admittedly feel like I would like to be part of the selection process for the peer review on this site.
Sure.
I think Al spoke a lot to some of his concern foreshadowing potential contention or concerns from townsfolk and other entities about it, and I just think that the board making the selection is more, maybe bulletproof is the word to put it, than leaving the onus on Al to make the decision on his own.
Okay.
To what extent are we bound to take a low bid?
We're not. We
Okay.
did, we have
Yeah,
a,
we can pick whoever we want.
yeah, we pick who's qualified for the actual project. Like we've done on all the other ones, we don't necessarily go low, we don't go high, we go by
Need.
who has the most qualifications for that one piece of land that we're looking at. And that's how we've done it.
And also who've been accommodated in a certain time
Certain
frame.
amount of, yeah,
Right.
the timeframe.
Because we don't want to
That's
stall
worked in the
anything.
past, is that-
Yeah.
Would a motion to make a subcommittee to review this with Al be in order? Rather than having a meeting?
I like that idea.
Okay, well, then we,
People would need to volunteer to be on it.
Well, I
Well,
was
that's
looking
not
at
hard.
that side of the table.
We
yeah,
got Steve and
yeah. Well, Al knows I'll come in,
But I
so.
was,
Yeah, I'd be very happy to be here for that.
Then I'll make that motion.
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna meet with Al. When Al gets the things, we'll keep everybody apprised of what's going on. So we're canceling December 18th then.
Correct.
Yes.
Sounds good.
Need a
All right.
motion for that? No.
Okay, I make a motion, we cancel December 18th.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
And you'll keep us apprised.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you'll end up, yeah, we normally give them copies anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll get a copy of all
Someone
the,
sent an email today, so there's been.
yeah, you'll get the copies of them all. And then, when they go to walk out to do whatever it is that we need them to do, Al will be there, Joyce will be there. If you
Correct.
wanna be there,
Yeah, she'll want to be there.
yep, go for it.
I don't want to be there.
Yeah. Because the person that's gonna do it is completely neutral. It
Correct.
doesn't matter what anybody says to that person is totally neutral. They'll do the report and then give us the report, and then we make all decisions based off of that report that comes
No,
back
I
to us.
understand, that's fine.
Yeah,
Okay, great,
okay.
all right.
Excellent.
Do we have to continue this then to a certain date?
Yes, it's
Yes.
going to be continued till, well, we have issues. Here we go.
Tentative schedule.
January 1st, we're not here.
No, we're not here January 1st, and Al will be gone for 3 weeks in January, which then puts our next meeting for February 5th. Not saying that we can't meet without Al, but that we won't have Al's input. But then the odds are we might not have the report back.
Very likely.
Yeah,
Odds are we won't have it back for January anyways.
no,
Okay.
probably not.
Not with the holidays, everyone.
Yeah, all the holidays, the new year, everything
make a
going on.
motion.
So I make a motion that we put them back on the agenda,
February 5th.
agenda for February 5th at 7:30.
2020.
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, have a good night, thanks.
Okay,
Have a
good
good
night,
night.
thanks.
Rob. Have a good holiday.
Yeah, you too, if I don't see you, I'll have a nice holiday.
All right. Next on the agenda, we have sign extension of order conditions, town order only, Yuri Landy Power Lane Development LLC, file number, it's Norwood file number N2018-12. Project location is Power Lane, Norwood, Massachusetts.
Okay,
Go to
keep
the treasurer's
talking.
report.
Yep, keep
Next up, we'll
going.
have the treasurer's report,
There's nothing tonight.
conservation agent's report. Al?
Okay, I got a couple of things here.
Thank you.
First of all, we sent an enforcement order to the investors that own what used to be Alviso's Plaza.
Big Y.
Big Y, because of the trash along the edge of the parking lot, and the screen that was supposed to screen the trash was broken down in some places. And I didn't get any response right away on that. However, what happened is Big Y is looking to have a new building there. And when we met with the lawyers and consultants for demolishing the existing building and building a new one, I says, well, before we go any further, we have a serious problem because you're contaminating our conservation land. And I explained what was going on, and the manager of the plaza, the company, the consultant company that manages it, responded that they got the notice from us and that they were working on getting something done, but they hadn't communicated that, okay? So I said, well, it wouldn't make any sense for you to come before the Conservation Commission with a filing to do a project there with this hanging over your head that we've got a problem. And Phil Mackey, Jr., is representing them, and he agreed with what I was saying, and 2 weeks ago, just before the holiday, I got a visit from Phil Mackey, and he brought in me some pictures showing the screen installed and the trash picked up, and all along the whole line. So I just want you to know that we crossed that obstacle, and that's the first step towards getting a new building on the plaza That's in the planning stage. Second thing is the 16th of this month, the asphalt plant will be shut down, and they're going to do the hazardous remediation there, starting on the 16th. So I have a meeting with them to look at the erosion control and such next week, and that project is going forward. Received a letter from Mass Highway, and it appears somebody's rattled their cage about stormwater. And because I've been complaining to them for years that they don't have catch basins with sumps and hoods and things like that, you know. And they stepping up at 3 sites in this area. One is on Route 1 near the stadium. One is on Route 1 across the street from Factory Mutual. And the other one is on 95 at the Canton-Sharon-Norwood border at the interchange with Neponset Street. And what they're proposing to do, I haven't received any engineering drawings or anything yet, but they're proposing to build infiltration swales in 3 places to catch the stormwater that comes off the road and filter it out before it's released into the Neponset River. Right now, it's a direct shot into the river, you know, the dirty water. So that's a positive thing, and I will be following that up shortly to see when we will see any more information. However, I think that since they're proposing to stay within their right-of-way and they're not adding any new travel lanes or anything like that, that this probably fairly easily falls under their exemption for maintenance of state facilities, and they probably, I don't think they have to file a notice of intent. They probably have to give me some more information so that I can have a chance to comment. So that's what I'm looking at. Obviously, they wouldn't start doing regrading the sides of the road this time of year, but maybe later next summer, next fall, or something like that. But I guess that's a positive thing going in the right direction. But that's something that's coming up. And let's see. At 84 Morse Street, the so-called bus lot, they have cleaned up and put the erosion control around. And when I was there the day before Thanksgiving, they had a couple of small piles in the middle of material that they would be removing. And they're going to start on that part of the project first. They were working on the big area, and it's rather amusing to me, but they were with a machine grinding up stumps and debris that was all over the place. You know, it's a pretty disturbed site. So they had a machine with a claw rather than a bucket that was picking stuff up and putting it on a machine, and the machine was shredding it up. Well, everything was going fine that day, so I come back the following Monday after, and this big machine, and it's a big machine, it's not a little shredder like the landscapers use, this is a big machine, was sitting idle and there was nothing going on because evidently the claw had picked up something and put it on the conveyor that drags it into the machine, and it broke the machine down, and the conveyor that brings it in is like three 16-inch wide flexible ladders with rollers and chains on the side that drags all this stuff into the drum that shreds. Well, the middle one of those chain things was broken into pieces, and the drum that is a big round drum about 4 feet in diameter with spikes sticking out had a big dent on one side. So
Put in
I
it.
would love to know what they picked up.
well, it must have made a hell of a noise when this happened, but they were shut down, and
Probably registered as an earthquake.
Yeah, okay, so at any rate, they're starting to clean up there, and that project is going forward. And after they get all this stuff out, so they can get in there and put the erosion control up along the river, we'll see some improvements. And the contractor that's doing that project I've worked with before when he did a subdivision in Walpole, and I was the agent then. And he built a house for himself in the middle of the wetland, and he did a wonderful job. And he's still living there because he loves it there. He's all surrounded by wetlands and such. So he's sensitive to this kind of project, and I think we'll have good results with him. So those are the things that are going on at the present time, and I'm sure they'll slow down a little bit with this terrible weather, but you know, it will limit some things. But that's what's happening.
Awesome, thank you, Al. Let's move on to CPC Representatives Report, Cheryl.
The only thing I have is our thing still hasn't gone off the bid.
Oh,
They've been busy. But once it does go out to bid, it sits for 30 days, because we're under 50,000, so.
And nothing's gonna happen this spring.
Yeah,
anyway.
it's not gonna happen until springtime anyway, so we're fine. Okay?
Cool, thank you. Proposal of future agenda items.
yeah, I'd like to add the MACC. I think we can discuss it.
I think that would be a great plan.
Yeah. I submitted a proposal, it was accepted, so I'm going to present in February at Holy Cross.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I think that
Excellent.
the initiative you took to do that
It'll
is
be fun.
wonderful and appreciated.
And you're involved.
I'm with you.
But so I think it would be nice to discuss what what was in the proposal and also to garner some feedback, since we have some great expertise here. So that's it.
When's
Do you,
that gonna be again?
do you want to wait until we get a little
February.
closer, things shape up a little bit more
Yeah.
conceptually before we?
I mean, the proposal is a proposal, but in terms
Yeah.
of the data and feedback that can be provided by this great group, I think that's something that we can postpone to the next
But when will you be
meeting.
presenting? Is that in February?
It's in February, yeah. I
Yeah,
think the
22nd
MACC, I think
maybe?
Ramonda gives out the conference information because all of us are free to go, so,
Yes, the spring environmental conference will be held in Worcester. I think it's the 22nd, but
yeah, Holy Cross.
Yeah.
It's a great venue, lunch is okay. It's a good buffet.
Congratulations again. I really
Thank you,
appreciate
yeah.
you taking the
That's
initiative to do that.
It's fun.
Obviously,
cool.
you represent yourself in a moment like that, but surely the board as well.
No,
and,
I feel I'm going as a representative of the Norwood Conservation Commission. I want to garner feedback from its members so that it's, I'm tying in information about what the Conservation Commission has done for the town as it relates to the topic, which is civic engagement as a learning tool about what the Conservation Commission does for the town. Yeah.
I think it's wonderful. I'm really excited, and I want you to just stay communicative about when you want that on the agenda
Sure.
for discussion with the group.
Yeah, we're not meeting again until January, so,
No, we're not even meeting in January.
Well,
remember.
February
February
5th.
February.
That's
So
Yeah.
the one then.
Put it on then.
that's the one.
Yeah.
February
Awesome.
5th.
Put it on.
Okay, sounds
So,
good.
Make a motion to put that on the agenda for February 5th.
Do I have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Excellent.
Great.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Okay.
Meeting adjourned.